My name is Arthur, and for a long time, my ambitions were simple. I wasn't a man who dreamed of conquering the world. I dreamed of building one. A small, quiet world with a steady job, a home filled with warmth, and the gentle rhythm of a life shared with someone I loved. At 31, working at a packaging plant, I believed I had finally found the architect for that world in a woman named Lorelei. She was vibrant, with a laugh that could make you forget a hard day's work, and eyes that held a universe of stories. When I fell for her, I fell completely. And with her came her son, Damien. He was a quiet, watchful boy of 11, and I saw in him not an obstacle, but an opportunity, a chance to be the father figure he was missing, a chance to build the family I craved from the ground up. For 7 years, we lived under one roof, a union built on the unspoken belief that love was a strong enough foundation, that it needed no legal papers to validate its existence. In the beginning, that belief felt like gospel. The illusion was perfect. We moved into my house, a modest but comfortable place I'd worked hard for. I filled its rooms with new furniture, its kitchen with food, and its silence with the hope of laughter. I wanted to be more than just Lorelei's boyfriend. I wanted to be Damien's stepfather, his friend, his guide. But from the very beginning, there was a resistance from the boy, a silent, unyielding wall. To him, I was an intruder, a temporary error in the timeline of his life, an unwelcome placeholder until his real father, a man he idolized despite his absence, would return to reclaim his family. This naive faith of his, a faith that I was just a passing chapter, was a quiet heartbreak I learned to live with daily. Our home, meant to be a sanctuary, became a silent battlefield. I was fighting a war I didn't understand against an enemy I wanted to love. I tried everything. I'd ask him about school, offer to help with his homework, invite him to play catch in the yard. Each attempt was met with a shrug, a monosyllabic answer, or a retreat into the solitude of his room. Lorelei would watch these failed attempts with a pained smile. "He's just going through a phase, Arthur," she'd assure me, her hand resting lightly on my arm. "He misses his dad. Just give him time." Time. I clung to that word. I believed time was my ally, that its steady current would eventually erode the boy's defenses and wash away his resentment. I was wrong. Time was simply the space in which the cracks in our foundation grew wider. The essence of our dysfunctional dynamic was perfectly captured on one particular Saturday morning. It was my day off, a rare chance to sleep in, but I woke before the sun, filled with a burst of domestic ambition. I decided to make a special breakfast. Not just toast and coffee, but the works. Pancakes stacked high and fluffy, bacon sizzling to a perfect crisp, freshly squeezed orange juice, and the rich aroma of coffee filling the kitchen. I arranged everything meticulously on the dining table, a feast designed to be a bridge, a moment of connection. When Lorelei walked in, her eyes widened. "What's all this?" she asked, a genuine smile playing on her lips. "Just something special for my family," I replied, my chest swelling with a fragile hope. She kissed my cheek, and for that brief, perfect moment, the illusion felt real. We were a family. Then Damien trudged in, his posture slumped, his eyes immediately narrowing at the sight of the carefully prepared meal. The hope in my chest deflated like a punctured lung. Without a single word, he bypassed the table I'd set, grabbed a plate from the cabinet, scooped a few pancakes and a handful of bacon onto it, and turned to head back to his room. "Damien," Lorelei called out, her voice gentle but strained. "Arthur made this breakfast for us to eat together." He paused at the doorway, not bothering to turn around. "I have homework," he muttered, the words clipped and dismissive, before disappearing down the hallway. The slam of his bedroom door was the final, definitive sound of my failure. The disappointment must have been written all over my face, because Lorelei quickly touched my arm, her expression a mixture of apology and exhaustion. "He's just being a teenager, honey," she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "He'll come around." But he never did. That breakfast became a recurring symbol of our life together. My earnest efforts, his cold rejection, and Lorelei caught in the middle, forever making excuses, forever smoothing things over without ever addressing the deep, festering wound at the heart of our home. I was the provider, the pillar, but in the family portrait I was trying so desperately to paint, I was becoming an invisible man. The years that followed did not bring the acceptance I longed for. Instead, they cemented my status as an outsider. As Damien grew from a resentful boy into a young man, his childish resistance hardened into a cynical arrogance. He turned 18, and with that milestone came the unspoken belief that he was now the man of the house, my house. Lorelei's years of coddling had sculpted him into a parasite, a brilliant student who used his academic dedication as a shield for his complete indolence towards life's basic responsibilities. He contributed nothing, yet he consumed everything, moving through the halls with the entitlement of a lord in his domain. My patience, once a seemingly inexhaustible well, began to run dry. The frustration built up day by day, drop by drop. I tried to impose small rules of coexistence. Clean up after yourself, help with yard work, be home at a reasonable hour. Each rule was a battle, and each battle was one I was destined to lose. Lorelei was always his champion, his defender. Any attempt I made to instill discipline was met with her fierce maternal protection. "He's my son, Arthur. Leave him alone," she would say, her voice a concrete wall I could never break through. My authority was undermined at every turn, my role reduced to that of a financier. I was allowed to pay for the roof over his head, the food on his plate, and the clothes on his back, but I had no right to ask for respect in return. The situation finally exploded one Tuesday afternoon. I came home from a grueling 10-hour shift at the plant, my body aching and my mind weary. I walked through the front door and was greeted by a scene of absolute chaos. The living room looked like it had been ransacked. Clothes were strewn over the furniture, empty food wrappers littered the floor, and a half-eaten pizza sat festering on the coffee table. And there, in the middle of the mess, was Damien, stretched out on the couch, eyes glued to the television, completely oblivious to the squalor around him. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't just the mess. It was the blatant disrespect. It was the silent declaration that my work, my home, my very presence meant nothing to him. Without a word, I walked over to the television and pressed the power button. The sudden silence that filled the room was heavy and charged with tension. Damien sat up, his brow furrowed in a mask of pure petulance. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice thick with irritation. "I'm teaching you to be responsible," I replied, my own voice dangerously calm and controlled. "This is my house, and while you live in it, you will respect it." His response was instantaneous, laced with a venom that shocked me. "I'll tell my father everything. We'll see if you're so tough then." The words hit me like a physical blow. He was invoking the authority of his biological father, a man I had never met, a man who had abdicated all responsibility as a weapon against me. In his eyes, that absent figure was the hero, and I was merely the villain paying the bills. A hot surge of anger rose in my throat. "You can tell him whatever you want, Damien," I said, my voice shaking with conviction. "I'm not afraid of your father." He stood up then, stepping towards me with a defiant posture, puffing out his chest. "Are you going to hit me? Is that it? My mother will know everything. He was a coward, a spoiled brat using his parents as shields. He wouldn't confront me directly, but he would threaten me with the wrath of others." As if on cue, he shouted, "Mom, did you see what he just did?" Lorelei appeared in the doorway from the kitchen, her expression grim. She had heard every word. "Yes, I saw," she said, but her disapproving gaze was fixed entirely on me. "Arthur, what is the meaning of this? I want an explanation." My anger gave way to a cold, hard clarity. I had to make her understand. "I just want Damien to show some responsibility," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is my house, and he needs to respect the rules." Lorelei looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw a contempt I'd never seen before. It chilled me to the bone. "He's my son, Arthur," she said, her words sharp and deliberate. "Only I can set limits for him. Only I can correct him. Damien is not your son." Those words, "not your son," they were more painful than any punch. The feeling of being a stranger in my own home, of being completely and utterly disenfranchised in front of the boy I had tried to raise, was a crushing weight. I wasn't a father figure. I was just the provider, an ATM. "So I have no right to correct him," I shot back, indignation rising in my voice. "But I'm forced to support you both like two parasites sucking my money?" Her expression shifted from contempt to outrage. "It's not like that. You have an obligation to support us if you want us in your life." Obligation. The word froze me. It wasn't a partnership. It wasn't a family. It was a transaction. A contract where I provided financial stability in exchange for the illusion of a life I so desperately wanted. The revelation hit me with the force of a physical blow. She tried to backtrack, seeing the look on my face. "Neither I nor my son are parasites. I fulfill my obligations in this house. I cook, I clean, I wash." She was right. She did all those things. But who was she serving? herself and her son. I was the only one in that house without a voice, without respected authority. That confrontation wasn't about a messy room or a television. It was about my place in that house, a place I thought I had earned with love and dedication, but which, in reality, had never belonged to me at all. That night, as I lay in bed beside her, the flame of my love for Lorelei began to flicker and die, and in its place, a bitter, cold loneliness began to grow. In the days following our explosive argument, the air in the house grew thick with unspoken resentment. Lorelei and I moved around each other like ghosts, the silence of punishment I endured in my own home. Damien, however, acted as if nothing had happened, his insolence now coated with a thin veneer of indifference. One evening, while I was trying to read in the living room, he appeared, pointedly ignoring me as he addressed his mother. "Mom, I need some money for a few things," he said, his tone casual, demanding. Lorelei, as always, didn't hesitate. "Of course, sweetie," she promised. But then she turned to me, her face arranged into a smile that seemed forced, almost theatrical. "Honey," she began, the endearment sounding alien in her mouth. "Our son needs some money. Give it to him." Our son. The phrase was a bitter irony. It was never our son when it came to discipline or responsibility. Only when money was involved did she and I suddenly become a team. I glanced at Damien. He was watching me, a gleam in his eye that I couldn't quite decipher, the smug anticipation of someone who knows they will get what they want. With a heavy heart, I pulled out my wallet. It contained the cash I had budgeted to last me the rest of the week. As I held it out, Damien stepped forward, plucked the wad of bills from my fingers, and with shocking audacity, peeled off almost everything, leaving me with just enough for a couple of modest meals. He offered a mocking little smile. "Thanks, Arthur." Not Dad. Not even stepdad. Just Arthur. The cold, impersonal name that defined our relationship. He gave his mother a quick kiss on the cheek and strolled out the door, leaving me standing there with my nearly empty wallet and a burning sense of indignation. Lorelei wrapped an arm around my shoulder, her voice attempting a comforting tone. "Don't be like that, love. He's just a boy. He has a right to defend himself." Defend himself? From what? From the man who gave him shelter, food, and a life of comfort? Her logic was so twisted, so centered on her son, that it left me speechless. She smiled, oblivious to my inner turmoil. "I'll bake a pie to make things better," she said, as if a dessert could patch the gaping hole in our relationship. I just nodded, burying my rage deep inside. A week later, the unthinkable happened. I was at the packaging plant, immersed in my work, when my boss, Mr. Harrison, a good, decent man who had always treated me with respect, told me I had a visitor. Standing in the doorway of his office was Damien. But this was a different Damien. The arrogant, mocking teenager was gone. In his place stood a young man who looked dejected, his shoulders slumped, carrying the weight of the world. My first reaction, foolishly, was compassion. "What's wrong, Damien?" I asked, a pang of worry cutting through my resentment. He approached, his voice low and humble. "I came to apologize," he said, looking at the floor, "for how I've been behaving. The separation of my parents, it made me sad, and I took it out on you. I just wanted my family back." His words were a masterstroke. They disarmed me completely. The hope I had so carefully buried began to stir. Perhaps this was it. Perhaps he was finally maturing. He seemed so sincere, so vulnerable. "How can I help you?" I asked, his apparent humility making me forget all the hurt. He looked up, his eyes brimming with what looked like unshed tears. "I need help with my high school graduation. The ceremony and the party are in another city, where my school has a sister campus. I have expenses for the suit, the flight. I just want my family to be there, to be together for my graduation. That would make me so happy." I thought of the money I had painstakingly saved over the years, a fund for our future, for a down payment on a bigger life. "I have some money saved," I said slowly. "I can help." "No, don't bother," he replied, his humility so convincing it took my breath away. "No, I insist," I said, my own sincerity total and absolute. I wanted to prove I was part of this family. I wanted to be the pillar he could lean on. What happened next felt like a dream. The joy in Damien's eyes seemed genuine. He stepped forward and hugged me, a tight, grateful embrace. "I will be so grateful to you, Arthur," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My mother and I are blessed to have you in our lives." As I held him, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This was the connection I had yearned for, the acceptance I had sought for so long. I held him at arm's length, studying his face, searching for any hint of deception. All I saw was gratitude. For the first time, he seemed to look at me not as an intruder or an ATM, but as a person worthy of respect. He left the plant with a smile that filled me with a profound peace. Mr. Harrison approached me, having witnessed the scene from his desk. "What was that all about, Arthur? You look 10 pounds lighter." "Finally, sir," I replied, a sigh of pure relief escaping me. "I think my stepson has finally accepted me. Finally, we're going to be a family." I went home that evening with a lightness in my step that had been absent for years. I poured all my energy, hope, and finances into making that graduation the perfect event. I bought Lorelei the most elegant dress I could afford. I paid for Damien's designer suit, his flight, his hotel. I was investing not just money, but my entire heart into this one single day that promised to unite us all. The atmosphere at home transformed. Damien was polite, even helpful. Peace, a long-absent guest, seemed to have finally taken up residence in our home. I was happy, blissfully, naively happy. I had no idea that the hug of gratitude was merely the prelude to the most devastating betrayal of my life. The day of the graduation arrived, wrapped in the brilliant sunshine of a perfect afternoon. My heart pounded with a nervous, joyful anticipation. This was it, the day my investment of love and patience would finally pay off. Mr. Harrison had some business in the city where the ceremony was being held and had offered to ride with me, a gesture of friendship I appreciated. As we drove, I couldn't stop talking about the future, about how this event would be a turning point for my family. He smiled, sharing in my happiness. For those few hours in the car, life felt perfect. I drove to my house, eager to pick up Lorelei and Damien. We would drive to the airport together, a family embarking on a celebratory journey. But as I turned onto my street, a scene on the sidewalk in front of my own home stopped my car, and for a moment, my heart. There they stood, Lorelei, looking radiant in the expensive dress I had bought her, and Damien, handsome and proud in his tailored suit. And beside them, with his arm casually draped around Lorelei's shoulders, stood another man, a ghost from the past, Damien's biological father. They were laughing, the three of them, a portrait of familial bliss, a portrait I was not a part of. Mr. Harrison looked from them to me, the shock evident on his face. A cold dread began to seep into my bones. I rolled down the car window, my mind scrambling for a logical explanation, trying to force a smile onto my face. "Hey, what's he doing here?" I called out, trying to keep my voice light. "We're all ready to go. I'm here." It was Lorelei who shattered my world. She turned to face me, and the warm, affectionate mask she had worn for the past month fell away, revealing the same cold contempt I had seen during our last fight. The smile she'd given me, the polite conversations, Damien's hug, it was all a lie, a meticulously crafted performance. "You're not invited, Arthur," she said, her voice as sharp and cold as ice. "This is a family event." A family event. Her words struck me with the force of a physical punch, knocking the air from my lungs. My legs felt weak. I turned my gaze to Damien, desperately searching for a trace of the humble boy who had hugged me in my office, begging him with my eyes to offer an explanation. "Damien, you told me you wanted your family back together," I stammered, my voice cracking. "I paid for everything. Your suit, your mother's dress." The glimmer of gratitude I'd seen in his eyes a month ago was gone, replaced by an icy arrogance that sickened me. He looked me up and down as if I were something he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "I said I wanted my family back together," he sneered, the words dripping with disdain. "My father and my mother, not you, my insufferable stepfather." Inufferable stepfather. The pain was physical, a blade of ice tearing through my heart and soul. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it left me reeling. Damien's father, the man who had never invested a dime or a minute in his son's life, just stood there, watching me with a mocking smirk. "It's about time he understood his place, isn't it?" he said to Lorelei. Tears welled in my eyes. I looked at Lorelei, the woman I had loved and supported for 7 years. "Lorelei, please," I begged, my voice a broken whisper. "I can't believe you're doing this to me." Her response was the final, fatal blow. She looked at me not with pity but with disdain, as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "Don't make a scene, Arthur," she said dismissively. "Everything will be back to normal in a week. We'll be back. Don't worry." She waved a flippant goodbye, an act so casual and cruel it made me feel like a complete fool. And then the three of them, the real family, got into the father's car and drove away, leaving me alone on the street, devastated, humiliated, and utterly broken, with my boss as the sole witness to my undoing. Shock held me paralyzed in the driver's seat. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The biological father, who had contributed nothing, was the hero. I, who had paid for everything, was the intruder to be discarded. A blind, white-hot fury I had never felt before began to rise from the depths of my shattered heart. It was a rage so pure it burned away the tears. Mr. Harrison stepped out of the car and came around to my side. He placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. "Arthur," he said softly, his face a mask of sympathy. "I am so sorry you had to go through that." I couldn't speak. He gently guided me into the passenger seat and took the wheel himself. We drove in silence for a long time, the perfect, sunny afternoon now seeming like a cruel joke. Finally, he broke the silence. "I've seen this before, Arthur," he said, his voice laced with a sad wisdom. "Women who can't let go of their ex-husbands. They use good men like you as a safety net, a placeholder, while they wait for a chance to reunite with the father of their children." His words penetrated the fog of my pain. "You deserve better than this," he continued, his voice firm. "You've given them everything: a home, security, your heart, and they repay you by humiliating you in public. I know it hurts now, but this might be a blessing in disguise. It has shown you their true colors. Now you can make decisions with your eyes wide open." He told me not to let the pain consume me, but to use it as fuel. And in that car, with the wreckage of my 7-year illusion strewn around me, I decided he was right. The humiliation was the last straw. I would no longer be the ATM. I would no longer be the invisible man. The Arthur they had known, the fool who paid for his own heartbreak, died on that street corner. A new man was about to be born from his ashes. The drive back from my house with Mr. Harrison was a blur of silent fury. By the time he dropped me off at a small motel for the night, the grief had solidified into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. They had treated me like garbage. I would treat their possessions the same way. The next morning, guided by Mr. Harrison's pragmatic advice, I began to systematically dismantle the life I had built. I was no longer Arthur, the hopeful fool. I was a man on a mission of self-preservation. My first call was to a junk removal service. I met them at the house and gave them simple instructions. Everything in the master bedroom that isn't mine, and everything in the second bedroom, all of it. I want it gone. I watched as they hauled away Lorelai's clothes, her jewelry box, Damien's video games, his posters, every last trace of their existence in my home. I felt no remorse, only a strange, chilling sense of liberation. Each item they removed was a shackle falling away. I directed them to take it all to the city dump. My revenge would not only be financial, but symbolic. Next, I went to the bank. I canceled the supplementary credit cards I had given to Lorelai and Damien. I then accessed the savings account, the one I had so proudly called the college fund for Damien. With a few clicks, I transferred every single cent into a new account under my name alone. The hardest and most liberating decision was the house. Legally, it was mine. I had bought it years before I met Lorelai. We were never married. Her name was on nothing. I called a real estate agent that same day. "I want to sell, and I want to sell it fast," I told him. Luck, it seemed, was finally on my side. A young family, a father, a mother, and their 2 small children was looking for a home in the neighborhood. They fell in love with the place instantly and made a generous cash offer. The sale was finalized with astonishing speed. As I packed up my own life, my books, my clothes, my tools, memories flooded back. The ghost of Lorelai's laughter in the kitchen, the faint echo of Damien's television shows. But these memories no longer held any warmth. They were specters of a life that had been a lie. Amidst the pain, there was a growing sense of freedom, as if I were shedding a skin that had grown too tight. Before I handed over the keys, I sat down and wrote a letter. It was my final act, my last word. I sealed it in an envelope and gave it to the new owners. "In about a week," I explained, "a woman and a young man might show up here. They will be confused. Please, give this to them." They promised they would. With the money from the sale and my reclaimed savings, and with the profound gratitude I felt for Mr. Harrison, I left that city behind. I moved across the country to a place where no one knew my name or my story. I was no longer Arthur, the betrayed stepfather. I was a new man, free from the dead weight, the parasitic anchors that had held me down. I enrolled in a university to pursue the dream I had abandoned when I met Lorelai, becoming a doctor. The energy I had once poured into a thankless family, I now poured into my studies. The silence of my small apartment was not lonely, it was peaceful. The long hours of studying were not a chore. They were an investment in myself. Still, a burning curiosity remained. A few weeks after I had settled in, I called my true guardian angel, Mr. Harrison. "So," I asked, "did they come back?" I could hear the smile in his voice. "Oh, they came back, Arthur. My friend, you have no idea." It was like the world had collapsed on their heads. He told me everything. They had returned from their family trip, expecting to walk back into the life I provided. The first shock was the new lock on the door. Then, the new owners emerged. Lorelai, furious, demanded to know who they were and what they were doing in her house. The new owner calmly explained that the house was theirs, legally purchased from me, Arthur, the sole owner. Mr. Harrison said they both turned pale. They couldn't believe it. They thought I was their loyal ATM, incapable of such a decisive act. Then, the new owner handed them my letter. Mr. Harrison had managed to get a copy from them later. He read it to me over the phone, and I smiled, imagining their faces as they read my final words. "Lorelai and Damien, you were right. You deserve to have your family together at the graduation. But I am tired of being seen as an ATM, existing only to support two ungrateful, blood-sucking parasites who gave me only scraps of affection and crumbs of love in return. I am tired of being invisible in my own home. I sold the house because it is mine. Everything was in my name. If you think you can sue me for abandonment, you are wasting your time. We were never married. Our stable union meant nothing legally. And Lorelai, you disenfranchised me, supported your son's disrespect, and always reminded me that I was not his father. Very well. I was saving a fund to put him through college. But after your betrayal, I realized neither of you deserve another cent of my support. You were just a hindrance, and now I am free of you. And you, Damien, do you love your biological father that much? Then go stay with him, because my life is about to begin, and yours is about to fall apart. I am free of the dead weight I was carrying for nothing. You and your mother, good luck with your new life. I will be gone, and for the first time in 7 years, I will be prioritizing myself. Goodbye." Mr. Harrison told me Lorelai had screamed, throwing the letter to the ground, her face red with fury. Damien had exclaimed that I was being childish, throwing a tantrum for not being invited to his graduation. They couldn't accept the reality that their safety net had just cut himself loose. "They went to the dump," Mr. Harrison added, a chuckle in his voice, hoping to find some of their things. And they turned to the father, of course, expecting him to take them in. But he's remarried. His new wife wasn't exactly thrilled at the prospect. The image of them scrambling through trash, searching for the remnants of the life they had taken for granted, gave me a satisfaction that was almost shameful in its intensity. But then I remembered the look of contempt on Lorelai's face, the sneer in Damien's voice, and the shame vanished. It was not revenge, it was justice. It was the necessary, brutal end to a chapter of my life, and the violent, beautiful beginning of a new one. 10 years, a decade can transform a person, and it had transformed me. The anger that had fueled my escape cooled into a quiet determination. The pain of betrayal became the foundation upon which I built a new life, a real life. I graduated from medical school with top honors. My former life as a factory worker, a distant memory. The man on the cover of a prestigious medical journal, lauded for his innovative techniques, was a stranger to the broken man who had fled his home all those years ago. In the sterile, ordered world of the hospital, I found not only a career, but also salvation. And I found her. Her name was Clara. She was a nurse, and her beauty was not merely in her appearance, but in the kindness that emanated from her soul. She was everything Lorelai was not: humble, genuine, and selfless. With her, love wasn't a transaction. It was a partnership of mutual respect and admiration. After 2 years of our romance that healed parts of me I didn't even know were broken, I asked her to be my wife. The night before our wedding, I told her everything. I laid bare the story of my past life, of Lorelai and Damien, of the humiliation and the revenge. I finished speaking, my heart pounding with the fear of her judgment. "You are free to go," I told her, my voice barely a whisper. "I will not bind you to a past that is not yours." She simply smiled, a sunrise of a smile that chased away all my shadows. "Arthur, This doesn't change anything, she said, her voice calm and sure. What you did was protect what was yours. You did the right thing. If I were in your situation, I would have done the same. In that moment of complete acceptance, I knew my life had finally found its true north. Our wedding was one of the happiest days of my life. Mr. Harrison, my true friend, was there, his eyes beaming with pride. Our life together was a symphony of quiet joys. The greatest joy came a year later, when Clara became pregnant. Lorelei had always said another child would be an unnecessary burden. But with Clara, it was the fruit of a true and profound love. Our son, Leo, was born, and as I held him in my arms, I felt a completeness I had never known. My family was real. One day, when Leo was a year old, the ghosts of the past decided to pay a visit. Clara and I were in the hospital lobby, our son gurgling happily in his stroller. My life was a perfect picture of peace. And then, hell walked through the door. It was them, Lorelei and Damien. They looked older, harder, but the arrogance was still there, lurking beneath a veneer of desperation. Before I could even react, Lorelei saw me place a kiss on Clara's cheek. Her face contorted with a venomous fury. She marched towards me, and with a sharp crack, her hand connected with my face. The slap echoed through the suddenly silent lobby. "How dare you cheat on me with this shameless woman after everything you've done?" she shrieked, her voice filled with a decade of festering resentment. Clara, my lioness, did not hesitate. She stepped between us, her eyes blazing. "Who do you think you are, hitting my husband?" she yelled back. "He's my husband! He left me with nothing and ran away!" Lorelei screamed, the lies dripping from her mouth. I regained my composure, the sting on my cheek replaced by a cold fury. "We were never married, Lorelei. And after what you did at Damien's graduation, I had every right to do what I did. How did you even find me?" Damien, ever his mother's champion, threw the medical journal onto the floor between us. My face stared up from the cover. "You became a famous doctor," he sneered. "You graduated with the college fund that was meant for me. Your obligation was to support us." It was then that Clara spoke, her voice ringing with the truth I had written in my letter all those years ago. "Now I understand why Arthur had every reason to abandon you. You truly are nothing more than parasites and leeches." The insult hit its mark. "This is a family matter. Stay out of it," they shouted in unison. "Arthur is my husband and the father of my son," Clara retorted, her voice so strong the entire lobby seemed to hold its breath. "A real son, born in wedlock, not a borrowed son like you." The tension was electric. Leo, sensing the hostility, began to cry. As Clara moved to comfort him, Damien, defeated by her words, lashed out at me again with the vilest thing he could conjure. "She's nothing but a homewrecker, and he's the son of a bastard." Something inside me broke. The years of restraint, the carefully constructed peace, it all shattered. The fire in my eyes became ablaze. Without a second thought, my fist connected with Damien's jaw. He staggered back, shock registering on his face. I didn't stop. I unleashed a torrent of blows, a decade of repressed fury and pain released in a merciless onslaught. "Stop it, Arthur! You're going to kill him!" Lorelei screamed, trying to pull me off. "He's not a boy anymore," I roared back, my voice raw. "He's a monster you created. If you don't control him, his fate will be jail or the cemetery." The words seemed to shock her into silence. Security guards rushed towards us, finally pulling me away. Blood streamed from Damien's nose, a stark red against the pristine white floor. The aftermath was chaotic. They filed an assault charge, but I had a lobby full of witnesses, doctors, nurses, patients who had heard Damien's vile insults. With the help of excellent lawyers, the charges were dropped, and Clara and I obtained a restraining order. They were legally barred from coming within 500 meters of me, my wife, or my son. Realizing they had no power in my new city, they retreated back to the old one, back to the bitterness and resentment that had defined their lives. I later heard that Damien struggled to hold a job, his academic intelligence failing to translate into real-world success. Lorelei continued to wallow in her victimhood, telling anyone who would listen how I had abandoned her. They were a distant shadow, a painful memory that no longer had the power to hurt me. As the years passed, Clara and I had another child, a daughter we named Lily. My practice flourished. Sometimes, late at night, I would look at Clara sleeping peacefully beside me, at the photos of our children on the nightstand, and I would think about the twisted path my life had taken. The pain that had led to joy, the betrayal that had led to true love. and I would know, with an absolute and unshakable certainty, that everything had happened exactly as it was meant to. I had lost an illusion, but I had gained the world.